Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Inspiration Paradise podcast. Today, we're going to talk to CVC Wellness. We're going to talk to Christian, and we're going to just get his insights. He's got a really great Instagram page. I'm going to put the handle up here. So, welcome, Christian, to this short conversation.
Thanks, David. I'm so excited to jump in, man.
Let's jump in. Let's go head first in here. Let's say on the top here, it says men's lifestyle coach. What kind of things do you do, Christian?
Yeah, so I primarily work with men right now. I'm a men's lifestyle coach. I support them in many aspects of life. So it's all about the holistic approach for me. It's not just focusing on just fitness or just nutrition, but it's integrating your habits, your routines, morning to evening routine, all the things that really encapsulate, you achieving not only the body of your dreams and your healthy physique, but also that inner fortitude we all crave and desire, which includes high energy all day long, which includes productivity. It also includes that inner fitness with coming inward and taking the time to really dive into the archives and understand who we really are, right? And find that inspiration, Nice. So I work with a lot of men in that aspect of really trying to optimize all layers of life. And so it depends on the individual, but that's what it's all about, is the individualized approach.
Yeah. And I bet you find guys who are sort of lacking in the diets department, other people sort of lacking in the movement department. Is that kind of what it's like? Like, you find guys who, some of them are eating junk food, and some of them maybe haven't.
Yeah. It's a spectrum of both, and I think a lot of it starts, my primary specialty is in holistic nutrition. And so I think that's one of the big drivers of making the biggest difference in life, is really prioritizing what is going down your mouth and how is that influencing all your cells, your energy levels, your mindset, or is it going to, get you down into more detrimental headspaces, brain fog, moodiness, lack of energy and motivation. So I think nutrition is one of the biggest things that we can make a difference in to improve not only our physical health, but our emotional, our intellectual, our spiritual.
Now I'm going to make an assumption. I'm going to make an assumption that school didn't teach you about this. School didn't. So how did you learn about this? How did you get into this?
Yeah, well, I did go to school I got my degree in holistic nutrition. I did get my bachelor's in science. However, and I studied kinesiology at university as well. However, I strongly believe that that's not where I learned the majority of this. So the majority of my groundwork in the 6 years of studying all this holistic stuff with fitness, nutrition, habits, it really is just picking up books, buying a ton of books, listening to a ton of podcasts, hours and hours every single day since I was like 16. I began diving into this stuff. And so I strongly believe that we have all this beautiful technology at our fingertips, and utilizing what's free or purchasing some books or programs and things like that. That's really where you can thrive in getting the bedrock of all health, right? Everything's at our fingertips online. And so that's where it started with me, is just dabbling in a lot of those areas with books, podcasts, connecting with people, networking, people in my local area. And so, yeah, it's definitely, I think it's possible for everyone to do this.
And that's kind of exciting for me. I envision a world where we have all this amazing information over years, thousands of years. We have it all, it's for free. And so hopefully we get a bit more passionate in society about this topic. So let's talk about some practical things, like what should I be eating? What should I not be eating? What kind of thing?
That's a difficult one. That's a big can of worms, but I'm ready to open it. So I think some of the priorities you can totally cut out of your diet is, we'll say like 4 different things. Sugars, added sugars is a good place to start. Really trying to diminish your intake of sugars, because as we know, it's similar to cocaine, the way it operates in the brain. It's addictive. And so once you start having that addiction flowing in, it's going to raise insulin levels, prevent you from burning fat. It increases cortisol in your stress response, and it really wreaks havoc on your organs. Your liver takes a load, your pancreas takes a load, everything does. Your arterial function takes a load. So it really is going to lead into heart disease. It's going to lead into diabetes. It's going to lead to all these dis-eases, this lack of eases in the body. So removing added sugars from processed foods is key. You can have your sugars from fruit, natural fruit, organic fruit, but try to avoid a lot of those added sugars. The second thing would be those vegetable oils, those industrial seed oils, canola, safflower, sunflower, soybean. Those are some priorities right there. if you can cut those out of your diet, you're going to notice a dramatic difference in your inflammatory levels. And inflammation is the main driver for all disease and sickness and lack of feeling good. So I highly recommend start getting rid of the vegetable oils and incorporating more of the healthy fats. And this could be from avocado, coconut, butter, ghee, other animal fats along that spectrum, from grass-fed beef, sardines, omega-3s, salmon, those types of foods. Another thing to get rid of, I would say, to avoid at least, is anything with artificial sugars is a big one. I think a lot of the products out there in the market have a lot of these artificial sugars made in a factory, in a lab, and they're extremely deleterious to our gut health, our microbiome. If we can get our microbiome healthy, we're going to feel sharper, more serotonin, healthier. So this includes sucralose, acesulfame, potassium, and a lot of other artificial sugars. This does not include stevia and monk fruit. I prefer those for sure. The studies show health benefits from those, or lack of issues. Last but not least, I'd say, things to remove from the diet. I would say just like any genetically modified foods, or on top of that, meat that is from factory farms. I'm just not a big supporter of the industry. I think it's sad what goes on in it. It's really disastrous. The way they treat these animals, which therefore that energy is translated into your body when you consume it. So I'm a big proponent of grass-fed regenerative meat, which is also more nutritious because they're eating grass, which gets converted into more omega-3s in their cells. And so big thing right there is also meat.
Yeah, I'm actually quite a staunch vegan. So I know it's controversial, but same thing with I love animals, man. I don't want to see them be killed. Factory farms, it's crazy, in my opinion. Now it says in your bio, it says eat ancestral. Now to me, at first glance, that means thinking back thousands of years, what were we eating back then? And trying to eat like that. They didn't have Cheerios, they didn't have Cheetos back then. Is that what you mean? What do you mean by eat ancestral?
Yeah, eat ancestral depends on the individual too. It depends on their DNA and their background. So it doesn't mean it's like a blank slate, like everyone should eat a certain way ancestrally, but it does mean it's dependent on the individual, and also it's dependent on us as a whole, as a population, as a human species. As a human species, we ate whole foods. We ate organic, naturally. It wasn't sprayed in pesticides. It wasn't processed in a laboratory or in a factory. So what I mean by eat ancestral is really tapping into whole organic foods as much as possible. That's number one. Kind of like the 80-20 rule, comprise 80% of your diet with whole organic nourishing foods. And then 20% enjoy, the processed foods we have available at our fingertips, the Cheetos, the Doritos, those types of things. And you'll live a more abundant life because your body will build that fortitude and resilience, I should say. So eating ancestral is dependent on the individual. So it's, for me personally, I do really well eating eggs. I do really well eating a high saturated fat diet, coconut oil, things like that. Some individuals ancestrally may not be as polar type like that, which is, more in the colder regions. Like my background's more in the Netherlands and Dutch. And so I do well with these fats and things. So I recommend doing a DNA test. I recommend finding out what your ancestry was, where you primarily were based in. And then you can kind of go from there, or you can have other, there's other programs and things out there you can submit your DNA to, which I know people get freaked out about. Oh, my DNA. It's like, you spit in a saliva tube, you should be okay. I don't know if they're gonna morph you or make some duplicates of you. Wow. But if they do, whatever, But that's besides the point. Basically, getting the idea of your DNA can support you tremendously and your efforts to get healthier by eating ancestrally.
Yeah, I never thought that deeply about it. I mean, where my ancestors came from, I come from the UK, which is on a big island, so they probably stay around most of the time. So probably why I do well on potatoes and things like this. Doing well, what does it feel like to eat healthily? What's the difference between eating healthily? How does it feel? Because someone might be not caring about what they eat. They might be thinking that they feel great. So what was it like?
Right. Yeah, that's the hard part. That's the hard part, David, is like when you're unhealthy, you don't realize what it feels like to be healthy and vibrant and energized, right? I've been there myself. I've had massive gut troubles growing up. I was constipated for almost 7 days at one time, which was freaky. So I went to the modern, hospitals or a lot of the modern Western care, I should say, and got prescribed heavy laxative, and that didn't solve the problem, right? So I started doing a lot of natural modalities from acupuncture, colonics and things like that, and eating a healthier diet. And eventually I started seeing more energy. I started having better digestion. So what does it feel like? Well, it feels amazing. It's like health is wealth, right? And that's like the number one thing I think a lot of us lose track of is, when we get sick or we start feeling low energy and low vibrational, it's hard to understand what it actually feels like to feel high vibrational. And so I recommend, people really tap into the intuitive approach and dive inward and say, am I really satisfied right now with my body or my energy levels? Am I satisfied with my health right now? Am I having skin issues? Am I having, achy joints? Am I having gut issues? All the things that can come up, brain fog. Ask those questions, meditate on it, come inward and see, come into the root cause of why that's happening. Ask, what am I doing in my life right now that's not serving me well? Or ask, what is serving me well? Do more of that. So that's a good way to go about it, is really tapping into the intuitive approach instead of just focusing on calories or, really focusing on certain things to get fat loss. It's like once we really prioritize living holistically, we'll understand what it really feels like to feel abundant and healthy.
Yeah, I mean, my personal experience, I used to not care about what I ate. And then I started eating just whole foods. I just wanted to see what it was like. And just eating up broccoli and stuff. And really, life just changes. It just felt like the sun got turned on or something. I felt like there was a black cloud over my head. We talk about brain fog and stuff like this. It's just like, yeah, that's definitely me eating terrible stuff. But yeah. I suppose there's quite a financial incentive to sell terrible food. But here's why I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because business is supply and demand. And so if we demand different stuff, businesses are going to supply different stuff. So as a society, if we get more woke, if we wake up, then we can change the situation.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think it starts with the individual effort. And a lot of times we forget how much power we really have at an individual level, and we have to be leaders. But, if we get into the idea that like we're not really making an impact because it's like there's so many people, there's almost 8 billion people on this planet. It's like, oh, how am I going to make an impact? Well, that's a lousy thought process, Yeah. Instead, we need to start having the mindset of I have a lot of power. I have a lot of power to make change. And that's where, we can make a big dent in saving the planet and saving ourselves.
Yeah, especially now with the internet. Because, Well, a couple last things I just want to talk about posture for a second. Posture. That's boring. Posture. Why would I talk about posture? Why do you like posture, man? What's good about posture?
Right. Well, I think it starts off, with overall confidence in your body, the way you carry yourself. You'll be a more attractive mate. So if you want to have a relationship with someone, people see, what is going on the inside is reflected on the outside, right?
Yeah.
So if people see you're kind of hunched over, rolled shoulders, nerd neck or tech neck, we call it, it looks like you're not as confident in your body. Therefore, it may be harder to attract a potential mate. And that's just kind of ancestrally speaking, that's where it goes biologically. We can see that. But if we have someone that's proud and tall and their shoulders are rolled back and they're walking this, that stride in a way, in a healthy gait and they're healthy walking, then, that's the opposite. That's going to be something that shows confidence. It shows like that someone's carrying themselves well. That's from the outside view, but it also shows what is going on the inside. If you're walking that way, it shows that you are feeling good. You're feeling more proud of what you are in, which is this vessel we have for a limited amount of time. So posture is critical, right? It's not just for those things I mentioned, but it's also for longevity. If you want to have a long living life and you want your spine to not be achy or back aches or neck aches or hip aches, all that stuff, we have to begin to recorrect this stuff if we're kind of punching forward from gravity. And so recorrecting it through exercises and things that can work the posterior chain for the most part. This includes things like your rotator cuff muscles and externally rotating the shoulder, or working on your hamstrings more, right? Because I think our hamstrings are pretty tight nowadays. So active stretching and strength training is extremely important. So that's another reason I'm not too big on chiropractic care, because it does help people a lot and it is very, very natural healing. However, it's neglecting the idea that muscles are moving the bones. It's not cracking a couple bones and all of a sudden this pain goes away temporarily. It's like, how do we keep this pain from ever erupting ever again? It's by recreating the muscles, which move the joints around to not pinch nerves, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a huge theme with holistic health today, preventative rather than treating the symptoms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. Well, last thing I want to talk about is longevity. Put that to the end, longevity.
Yeah.
So, just a quick question. How old do you think a man can live to?
I think we can live to 150 if we wanted to, with the amount of tech and modern tech stuff today and the amount of knowledge we have on aging process in a cellular level and mitochondrial health and the way cancer operates and preventing that, because it's inevitable. We're all going to experience cancer at some point in life when we're really old or whatever, or any disease for that matter, right? Because we start just failing. But how do we slow down that process? It's not about anti-aging. It's about basically, because it's impossible to like anti-age. We're aging. That's a disease in itself in a sense. We're always going to age, but it's how you can slow that process down. So I think we could easily live in the late 100s if we wanted to as a society. And that's the thing, David, we're living longer than ever before in the history of humankind, but are we living happier and are we living healthier? No. And that's, ancestrally speaking, going against everything that should be, and there's reports of certain Neanderthals and ancestors we have that have lived in the hundreds, 200s, 300s, even in the Bible, they say that, right? So I think it's totally possible with the right magic.
Yeah. I always recommend a book by Daniel Reed called The Tao of Health, Sex and Longevity. That book blew my mind away because he's talking about people who lived in ancient China, about 180 years old. And
wow.
Yeah, it's like, he really writes well. It's Daniel Reed. So to finish, could you please, let's actually give 3 ideas each on how to promote longevity. So I'm going to start off with one. It's probably the easiest, most obvious one. Eat whole foods. Eat whole foods mostly, 80%.
Eat whole foods. Yeah, that's definitely number 1. Nutrition, I think, is a good place to start for sure. And then number 2 that comes to mind, I would say connection and community. If we look at the blue zones, which are basically the longevity markers in the world, the longest living places like Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, Costa Rica, there's certain locations, places in Hawaii, they are living extremely long due to community and connection and family and kinship. That is where you see longevity because we're not stressed out in bubbles alone, isolated. That's a problem with COVID that's occurred over the past couple of years. That's why longevity is decreased. So I think connection and community is extremely important as well. And I guess the next one would probably be consistently moving, squatting, lunging, hinging. All the different movements throughout the day can help immensely too, because I think the sedentary lifestyle is setting us up for illness and sickness because it's stagnation, right? And in traditional Chinese medicine, being able to get the chi or energy or prana or all that stuff, all that moving and that lymphatic drainage, we can begin to feel more energized, ironically. Even though we're expelling energy and moving, we're actually re-energizing our cells because we're lubricating all that stagnant energy. So I think it's a big one as well. As those 3 are pretty potent. If you can focus on nutrition and connecting with people, having good, healthy relationships, and then also moving consistently throughout the day, you're in a good spot.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for that. Really good. I'd just like to put this
absolutely
on a little insight at the end. We talk about old people being old in the blue zones. I think a part of that has to do with it's more accepted to be an old person when you're in a family and you're a great grandmother. But when you're alone and you're old, it's just like, oh, what am I old for? Family. It's like, yeah, great grandmother. Thank you for that. Honestly, really, really great. Everybody follow CVC Wellness. Get some great tips. He's got a great physique too.
Whoa!
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Kristen.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
All right, brilliant. Well, thank you, man. And
heck yeah, dude. That was awesome.